It's good to be back in the Pokémon world after a while away from it, but what's an interesting series if it doesn't change things up 80 episodes in? As debatable as the anime's changes can be, I wouldn't want it to stay the same for too long. Even the most minute changes can be beneficial to a show like this in the long run, but it's clear the Pokémon anime had some growing pains in this regard. Whereas later soft reboots of the show would change the tone, art style, and most of the characters, the original series only went halfway in adapting for a different generation of games and viewers. So this video is going to cover the first two seasons that try to transition, Season 2, Adventures in the Orange Islands, and Season 3, The Johto Journeys. At least that's how they were classified in America. For those of you who want to hear what I have to say about the Johto saga at large, I'm sorry, but you'll have to wait a couple more moons for that. 77 episodes is already a tall order by my standards, and it's not a far cry from Indigo League in length, so with that said, what does this period add to Pokémon? By 1999, Pokémon was inescapable in Japan, and gathering a massive audience overseas. Even if Pokémania died as quickly as Disco, there was no denying its influence would be unforgettable. But in worst case scenario that the series would be a flash in the pan, Pokémon Gold and Silver were being developed as a way to end the series on a high note. But they fell into what gamers call development hell, where a highly anticipated game is constantly delayed due to programming errors, mismanagement, or any other such reason. The rest of the Pokémon series, including the anime, was to continue as normal, but there was a problem. In January 1999, the anime's saga essentially ended. The Indigo Plateau finished up, Ash came to terms with losing, and the next set of games was still months away. So a sub-arc was written up to fill the void, where Ash would travel across exotic islands and compete in a new championship. With one minor tweak to the cast, the anime had its first major shift in setting, and continued airing as if nothing happened starting on January 28th. In a season now known overseas as Adventures in the Orange Islands, fans got more small glimpses of the upcoming generation of the series, and a lot of water. A lot of water. The story picks up right where the previous arc left off. Ash Ketchum is being celebrated for his victories at the Indigo Plateau, but is quickly called by Professor Oak, along with his friends Misty, Brock, and Pikachu, to run an errand. He needs to retrieve a gold and silver Pokeball, creatively titled the GS Ball, from a professor in the Orange Archipelago called Professor Ivy, who can't seem to open it. While in the region, Brock decides to stay with Ivy for research purposes, and the writers replace him with a white Pokemon artist called Tracy. This is apparently because the team thought Brock's design would be criticized overseas for looking like a stereotype, so they replaced him with a white guy for this season just to be safe. Yep, whitewashing was the safe thing to do back in the 90s. It doesn't help that Tracy is not a very interesting character. He draws girls sometimes, is a fan of Professor Oak, and smiles more than a Sunflora, but he doesn't add much to the group dynamic, which otherwise stays entertaining. Pikachu's as cute as ever, and has started to lose some weight. Misty's still easing up on Ash and embracing her newfound maternal instincts. Team Rocket are still up to their old tricks, staying threatening on occasion but becoming more humanized, especially Meowth if that makes sense. And it hasn't taken long for Ash to find a new league to compete in and more badges to earn. Unfortunately, since the Orange League has never been featured in any other Pokémon material, and it remained Ash's only championship victory for decades, whether or not it's canon is sometimes brought into question. Personally, I think that it is. Not just because the GS Ball arc continues after this, but because this is the shortest season of the anime, but I still invested so much dang time into it. And most of that time was spent watching them travel across the ocean from island to island on a baby Lapras. A breath of fresh air at first, but the opening shots of them all alone out at sea got a little depressing after a while, even when they reached land in less than a minute. That's probably my biggest issue with the Orange Islands. The gimmick gets tiresome by the end. I tend to love beach and ocean settings, but they keep telling the same types of stories. This island has a certain type of Pokemon, that island has a group of people in trouble. It's not that different structure-wise from the Indigo League, but that structure didn't lend itself well to the new setting. I think that's enough criticism of Season 2, because I still like it overall. Some things I do like are that, writing-wise, the quality of the dub is still pretty good, and the animation is still getting better. The designs of everything are still consistent, but the motion has gotten a bit smoother, especially in the comedic scenes. And the gym battles, are still fun diversions with entertaining gym leaders and challenges. I say challenges because Pokemon battles aren't the name of the game here, competitions are, and when Ash wins these, he gets his badges. I'm on board with this change, as it helps the rest of the season feel like a change of pace if the core element of Ash's progress has been shifted. And speaking of a change of pace, this is the first time Ash wins a league since he coasts through the Orange League with a mix of skill and what I call dramatic luck. But it's just a minor league, so he isn't a bona fide Pokemon master just yet. Everyone has a pipe dream, and this has to be Ash's for a long time to come. But I haven't seen every season yet, so I don't know how I feel about his weak track record at the moment. But it wouldn't be Pokemon without Pokemon, and they still got a lot of Pokemon. As I've mentioned, Pikachu and Meowth are still pretty great, and Ash's Charizard actually starts to listen to him again after dozens of episodes. This is awesome. I hope he stays for a very long time after this. Aww. And he also caught a Lapras to journey across the archipelago with, and a Snorlax for some extra comic relief, I guess. I don't like his Snorlax that much, nor do I like Tracy's Pokemon. A Marill who can hear anything within a range, who's more of a tool than a character, and I already can't stand Scyther for the voice alone, but now we've got one with a sob story? Jeez. Well, at least Misty's Togepi got a little more powerful this season, learning Metronome and saving the kids' lives more than once. And I think that's about it for Pokemon I remember, except for one of the 30 Tauros Ash caught in the Safari Zone being his saving grace at the Orange League. Yeah, it was dumb luck, but at least they finally made use of that herd of Tauros he caught. Despite some issues, I'd still say this was a good season all around. I mean, it gave us episodes like A Scare in the Air, a thrilling adventure in a rundown blimp because Team Rocket were too unlucky to get a good one, and it gets the gang's journey to the Orange Archipelago off to a gripping start. A grip that fades into something more chill, save for Pikachu Revolts, where a rival sector of Team Rocket hypnotizes all the Pokemon in a city using a Hypno. I mean, what else? But it's such a great moment when all the Pokemon are released and returned to their owners, so it's dark but also has the warm fuzzies near the end. In the Pink was a good idea for an episode, because I can actually recognize it compared to the rest. They made a good story out of it as well, about why poaching rare specimens is wrong, and I wasn't surprised with Jigglypuff's appearance, as small as it was. A ship full of shivers scratched a nautical itch that the rest of the season was lacking, and it's also about preservation. You've got these ghost Pokemon protecting their master's treasure from snatchers, and I was already enjoying the Ghost Pirate hearsay before this, so yeah, cool. Meowth Rules is probably my favorite episode of the anime so far. Meowth gets stuck on an island that worships him, and he has all the money and food he could possibly want, but he remembers his real home is with Jessie and James. There's no place like a team of unsuccessful animal smugglers, I guess. I kid, it's a must-watch for Meowth fans, and it stands on its own exceptionally well, which most filler episodes tend to fail at. I think I could say the same thing about Bound for Trouble, where he's tethered to Pikachu in the middle of an island due to a failed kidnapping. But they eventually bond, pun intended. Despite Meowth's development not being permanent, it's good we get snippets of him being a relatable character like this. With Misty meets her match, it felt like they were continuing to test her character in the right way, instead of just having her be Ash's companion. A boyfriend may be nice, but being Ash's friend is just a better choice, or something to that effect. She gets another spotlight episode later on, the Stunspore Detour, where Ash and Tracy, remember him, are paralyzed, so Misty will have to find the remedy, but she bumps into James and Meowth, who also need it for Jessie, so they end up calling a truce to help their friends out. Again, little sweet stories like this go a long way. The best battles of this season, by far, were fought across Hello Pomelo and Enter the Dragonite, which see Ash battle against Drake and become an Orange League champion. Let me tell ya, this two-parter kept me invested in an oddly long battle, and it was a sight to see Ash win this time. But there were some blunders that weren't all bad, but I don't think were justified. The joy of Pokemon involves this big, strong super nurse Joy who has no real personality other than being passive and nice. I wanted a little more out of this character, whereas with Snack Attack, I didn't want anything it did at all. There's this Snorlax that's eating an entire set of islands at a ridiculously fast rate, and ridiculous in the sense that it's frustrating and doesn't make any sense, and Ash decides to catch it because, well, he needed to catch something, I assume. If you couldn't guess, Wherefore Art Thou Pokémon is Romeo and Juliet, but with Nidorans, and some of the most annoying kids in the anime so far. They don't even have a good reason to be mad at each other, or be representative of kings and queens in this story. I'm also not too keen on The Wacky Watcher, about a watcher who's a little too wacky for my liking, and it focuses on Magikarp migration, which is boring as can be. By this point, I was getting fatigued by the season, so at least it ended shortly after. But the penultimate episode, A Tense Situation, was an embarrassing way to bring back Brock, and felt like they squished 2 Pallet Town episodes into one, and it ends up feeling like madness. Thank you lucky stars, that's just the penultimate episode of the season, because the very last has more time to breathe, reintroduce Gary, ditch Tracy, and set the kids off to Johto. But before I talk about that, I'll reiterate that I liked Adventures in the Orange Islands just fine, mainly since I just have a lot of respect for second seasons that take risks like this, and felt like the series did what it could to stay interesting past the 100 episode mark. The 1000 episode mark? That's a different story, but let's get to Johto now. Pokémon Gold and Silver were finally set to be released on Game Boy Color in Japan in the fall of 1999, and that meant the anime writers now had a chance to write an adventure based around this second generation of games. The formula would go back to normal, with Brock returning and the gang travelling on foot through forests and mountains, but they'd be going through the new Johto region from the new pair of games, and discovering a fresh batch of 100 Pokémon to see and learn about. So it was weirdly going back to basics, with the added material from the new game, so what could go wrong? Well, from what I've heard and read from American fans, the Johto saga got lower ratings and a less positive reception than Kanto, despite the games being considered an improvement. Keep in mind that I'm just watching the first of the 3 seasons it's broken into overseas, so maybe Johto League Champions and Master Quests are a lot worse. But even the Johto Journeys didn't get things off to a great start. Let me explain. In the span of 1 week off TV, Ash, Misty, Brock and Pikachu have made it to Johto, and Ash gets registered to compete in the Johto League and continue his quest. It's a whole new world with a whole new tagline, a whole new set of Pokémon cities and gym battles, and a whole new millennium to air in. Don't worry though, Milk still works. But seriously, in spite of the shift in location, it's Pokémon alright. The same show you were watching in 1998, and you would have been watching in 2000 if you stuck around. The same heroes, the same arc for Ash, and the same Team Rocket subplots that you've been watching for 3 years now. That isn't an issue in and of itself, but by the end of Season 3, the show was up to 150 odd episodes, more than most Western animated shows, especially at the time, could even dream of producing. It's really easy to get fatigued by a show like this already, but in 2020, you have to watch at a certain pace to have a shred of hope in catching up with the whole series. That is, if you're going through the whole series like me, and I don't blame you if that isn't a challenge you're willing to take up. I guess I'm venting my feelings about the sheer length of the Pokémon anime because the Johto Journeys of the first 3 seasons is by far the weakest in terms of story content. The GS Ball arc is dropped entirely after Ash leaves with another professor because the Pokémon that was supposed to come out of it, Celebi, was used in one of the movies. It's kinda sad that 20 years on, there are still fans waiting for the GS Ball to return, even though we know for a fact it's not going to, and all the mystery surrounding it was a waste of time. So one of the big ongoing plot lines had been brought to a close, but that doesn't matter as long as Ash still collects Pokémon and fights gym leaders to keep you invested. Well, one issue with that. Ash gets a host of new Pokémon, but gives up some of his older ones, including Charizard, who he had only recently been able to tame. And across the 41 episodes that comprise this season, guess how many gym battles there are? 2. Yeah. I'm not saying throw the other 39 episodes in the bin, because there's a lot of fun to be had here. The new Pokémon are really cool. Heracross is a strangely bulky first edition, but he works out. Chikorita, Cyndaquil, and Totodile all have fun little gimmicks, though I kind of wish Chikorita having a crush on Ash was dubbed out, it's too weird of a concept. And I don't think we can forget Wobbuffet. He doesn't do much, but he makes for a great addition to Team Rocket, being a comedic foil to the comedic foils. I think that's another thing this season did right. It made Team Rocket less of a menace, and more like a gang of losers, without getting too sad about it. I sense that how villainous they are is going to change greatly depending on the era, but Relatable Losers Incarnation is my favourite at the moment, since it's really hard now to take them seriously. Ash himself seems a little more experienced in battle, making smarter decisions more often this time around. I don't know if he's fighting right, since I've never played the card game, and the only video game I have is Blue version, but it's good to see he's gotten some development. He's still a little too adventurous for his own good at points, but hey, anything that keeps him fun to watch, I can dig. Pikachu's still Pikachu, Misty's still slowly getting better at caring about the other trainers' Pokémon, and Brock, oh man, Brock's back in full force. Finding an episode where he doesn't fall in love with a woman is like playing Russian roulette, it's a shock when it happens. But his breeding is taken a little more seriously, and having someone more responsible and interesting travel with Ash and Misty again was a relief. If there's one thing I like about the Johto journeys more than the first 2 seasons, though it's a gut feeling, it's that I can trust these characters more to be entertaining and keep me hooked on the series. Again, it's probably a gut feeling having to do with familiarity, because the writing of the dub has stagnated. As I've mentioned, there are only 2 gym battles in the entire stretch of episodes, and a vast majority of that time is spent on filler episodes. Here's the thing, I don't mind filler on its own, but when you watch 3, 5, even 10 episodes in a row where nothing really happens, you'll start to wonder why it's taking so long just to get from city to city. There's an absurd amount of towns, forests, and mountains in Johto. It seems massive, almost like a whole new world is in a whole new planet. I understand the possibility that they knew it would be a long wait for the next set of games, if they ever came around, so taking their time was a safe bet instead of risking having to make another sub-arc. My biggest hope in the last review going into these seasons was that Charizard would become more tolerable again. That happened. My new big hope for the anime is that Ash is able to travel quicker and get more badges. But otherwise, the writing has stayed about the same for better or worse. The comedy isn't very different from how it functioned 100 episodes ago, but I don't mind that. It's a comfortable type of comedy that I don't tire of. And the action's still getting more thrilling to witness, along with the rest of the animation quality slowly going up. From what I've been able to watch, the picture is much clearer, like the film they used to print the cells was more wide or something. I can only speculate, but I noticed a difference in the art beyond the Pokemon's designs, which in my opinion, are still inventive and cool, much like they were in Gen 1. Gotta give credit where it's due to the game's graphic designers and artists, because they have to make another 100 of these things every 3 years, and that has to involve a lot of effort and patience. But back to the anime, there was still plenty of great standalone episodes in the Johto journeys, the cream of the crop being Illusion Confusion. Throwing the old Forest of Illusion trope into Pokémon, there's all these varied issues the gangs have to face while trying to find a Hoothoot, a Pokémon that's able to see through illusions for them, which is a good way to show how useful this new generation can be. Then there's Flower Power, an episode I like for the same reason I like Pokémon Fashion Flash, and that I have no idea. It's a very light-hearted romp about Blossom's dancing, and the choreography manages to be perfectly cute. Then there's For Crying Out Loud, an episode about Misty having to take care of an easily upset Meryl. Again, it's not the kind of episode you or I would think I would enjoy, but this anime always manages to surprise me. I also thought Chikorita's big upset was a neat adventure for her, Pikachu, and Ash. It was good that the show gradually made us understand the Pokémon more and give them personalities, motivations, weaknesses. Point is, this is far better than this for a minute. Foulweather Friends was one of those episodes that wasn't necessarily deep or action-packed, but really damn cute. The story about an Oddish wanting to be a Hoppip really does something to my heart. Actually, this might be deep. Becoming a Hoppip should be a new term for transgenderism. Then in Tricks of the Trade, we get Wobbuffet. How could this be a bad thing? The strange and tragic thing is, he seemed to get along with Ash and co just fine before becoming a part of Team Rocket due to wacky shenanigans. Oh well, or wob, well. Next, the Firing Squad, where Squirtle reunites with the Squirtle Squad. It was such a cool way to send him off and reiterate his leadership and courage. On a similar note, I guess Charizard's burning ambitions was good, I guess. But not as good as No Big Whoop. Already whoop is a funny word.
I feel our meeting was destined to happen, and your whooper was the Cupid that brought us together.
And this little piece of work is now my favorite Pokemon.
Opa! This is great! Whooper's actually obeying me!
He's like the Roadrunner, it's perfect. I'm not even kidding. Whooper of all Pokemon really got to me. Another good episode was Forest Grumps, the one where Team Ash and Team Rocket get separated with one another. It's awkward, but a nice change of pace for their dynamic, and cements the new direction of Team Rocket essentially being paid hobos. I can see their portrayal here being pathetic to some people, but I'm happy whenever they're made to be more sentimental. Last of all, another great comedy episode was The Fortune Hunters, in which both groups get carried away with a new Pokemon craze. Hardy ha, I get it. and their reactions to a fake Pokemon forecast are wonderful. Misty doesn't want to be a Gyarados, and James is fantastically delusional as a Moltres. And as if to bookend the highlights of this review, the other Team Rocket's back as the makers of the forecast, and this is the first time I've seen Giovanni in 18 months. Again, I'll say I'm just watching the show, not the movies. Still waiting for Giovanni's potential in the show. Yep, still waiting. But let me tell you, when Season 3 got bad, which it didn't that often, mind you, it got terrible. Spinarak Attack has so many oddities that my review of it would be more like a pop quiz. Why are Team Rocket inspired by this black arachnid group from hundreds of years ago? Why does Officer Jenny mistake Ash and the gang for this group, despite it being caught hundreds of years ago? And why is everyone's plans in the climax so backwards and poorly executed? And it's kind of a sad episode. Rest in peace, James's bottle cap collection. A bout with Sprout had this really annoying kid who wanted to take Ash's Pikachu for himself, which was an annoying conflict to see this far into the show, and it has a really lame sense of humour. I'm also not very keen on good quail hunting or hot matches, both Cyndaquil focused episodes, the former because of the guy Ash is hunting against being utterly irritating, and the latter because I can't take Cyndaquil's training too seriously when his voice is so high and squeaky. I don't know what it is with me and fire types. Is this part of some elaborate personality test? Well, whatever it is, I know what I like out of the Pokémon anime, and after 3 very long seasons, and another 20 to go and counting, that's a good thing. I think the reason I was a little more harsh on the padding this time around was I wanted to see Ash succeed, and I wanted to see new facets to the Pokémon world. So in that way, my biggest issue with the show, as of the year 2000, is that I want more. Ironic, isn't it? Well, the best thing I could say about these first 2 makeovers to the Pokémon anime is that they're breezy. Orange Islands thanks to the tropical setting, and the Johto journeys since it's the place to go if you want simple, safe, and familiar stories. Would I suggest watching them after Indigo League? Sure, if you're up to it, but probably not right after. Give yourself some time to breathe between seasons, and trust me, it won't be too different when you pick it back up again. At large, I'm still proud of this anime, but I'll be speaking of proud sooner than later. Goodbye for now.
Next, Oscar has some pretty good moves. And Penny always has her friends. The Proud Family, right here on Disney Channel.